Backstory, and we're on the radio in the Empire Fly's capital, Washington, D.C., on 105.5 FM, AM 1390. Joined today by a special guest co-host, Jason Goodman, on Truth Tuesday, here on the Backstory. Is that right, Jason?
That is correct.
Now, we're very happy to be joined by a great friend of the show, great guest, Sonja van den Ende, coming at us straight out of Moscow. How you doing, Sonja?
Hello, Lee. Fine, thank you.
Good. Now, by the way, rub it in. What's the temperature in Moscow? The reason I'm saying rub it in, Sonja, where I am, it's 9 degrees below zero Fahrenheit, which I don't even know what that would be, Celsius. But what's the temperature there?
Well, actually, it's a bit warmer now. The last few days, it's around 0 degrees, -2, but it will be colder again the end of the week. So a lot of snow here. I only see snow.
Now, Sonja, we're talking about the tanks going to Germany, these Leopard tanks that's coming to fight Russia. And the German people are apparently very torn on this. Deutsche Welle News, DW News, reports that 50% of the German people, and I think that number is lower because DW is a biased source. Does that make sense? They say 50% of people don't like sending tanks into this fight because they're clearly historical resonances with German tanks going into Russia, right?
Yeah, that's right, because, we all know the historical content, what happened in the Second World War. So they see it as an act of war, a lot of people, especially in the eastern part of Germany. A lot of people are against it, they were living under the GDR as well. But also there are a lot of German Russians living in Germany. So they are against it, of course. But, it's a very terrible thing when you think about it. It was in the Second World War, also German tanks went into Russia and now again. So yeah, it's I think 50-50, maybe 40-60, something like that. People are against it, especially the elderly people. They remember, or from their parents, grandparents. So yeah.
But they're sort of being pulled along by the German politicians, right?
Yeah,
the German politicians don't care what the people think.
Nah, not really. If you look at them, I mean, maybe you have seen the German politicians in the US as well, like Annalena Baerbock. She's the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Well, yeah, it's a laughing stock actually, because I don't think she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know what she's speaking about. I mean, she actually declared war against Russia when she was speaking to other EU members in Strasbourg, I think she was. And she was saying, yeah, we are not fighting each other, but we are fighting Russia. So that's actually a declaration of war, So she's very, very stupid. I think Scholz called her to come to the office and told her, yeah, well, it's a very terrible mistake. But if it's a mistake, I don't know, but I guess it is. But she is very ignorant.
Now, have you seen any 14 or 88 tattoos on the Nazis in Ukraine? Have you seen those tattoos with the number 14 and 88 in it, Sonja?
Well, I didn't look at that really when I was that time. I know they have a lot of tattoos, I mean, SS signs and so on, but most likely they have. But I myself, I didn't see it because I was there in June, so.
The reason I mention that is 14 and 88 are neo-Nazi signs, okay? So
yes.
Germany has announced that they're sending 14 tanks out of a total of 88, which I think is a clear message being sent to Russia that we're Nazis. If them doing those numbers, I don't think is accidental. Do you hear anybody talking about that in Russia? I wouldn't think so.
No, nobody. I didn't read it actually in the news, or I didn't hear it, but Now you mention it, and yes, of course, that's true, and I think it's a very worrying sign. It's actually awful when you think about it. So it's what I say all the time. Fascism and Nazism is still there, and I think it was never gone, especially not in Germany, you know, because after World War II, a lot of these high-ranking officers, SS members, they all got the same jobs back in the police or somehow in politics. A lot of them appear to be in politics again. So it was never gone, actually. There was a whole piece about the Bundes, yeah.
And the decision to send the tanks, by the way, 88 is for Heil Hitler, because H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So the reason is 88, 88, HH for Heil Hitler. That's what that means. And the 14's a neo-Nazi, the 14 words. It's a neo-Nazi phrase, but 88 is Heil Hitler. And so this decision to send tanks came at the same time. It was Holocaust Remembrance Day. And Poland not only did not invite Russia, and we all know Russia liberated the concentration camps. They're the people who did that, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know. I wrote a whole article about it. It's even the director of Auschwitz, he proclaimed inside Auschwitz, in front of survivors or relative of survivors, he said clearly that Russia are the new fascists, the new Nazis. So can you imagine this, doing this in Auschwitz? It's unprecedented.
That's right. No, yeah, that's why I'm using this as a leaping off point to talk about that subject, because I think that was so outrageous. So what else do you think about the telling the opposite of the truth about the Holocaust?
Yeah.
How insulting is that, Sonja?
It's very insulting, not only for Russia, but for the survivors, you know? And it's not only what most people think about Jews or something, but like in my country, the Netherlands, you have opposition, you had opposition members as well. So that's actually the bad part. My grandfather was in the resistance. So, you know, that's horrible. That's very bad.
I think the symbolic meaning of it as well is important. And so, and of course, you talked about the Netherlands, and of course, Holocaust Remembrance Day because of Anne Frank's presence in Amsterdam. That's a big deal in the Netherlands, correct? Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Yeah, it is usually, but this year it's different because usually they do it on the 27th or the 28th, but now they decided to do it on the 29th. So that was actually yesterday, the Monday. Prime Minister and, you know, some organizations were invited in Amsterdam to remember the Holocaust, but Russian embassy personnel was not invited to come, or Russian organizations. So how bad is this, you know? This is, what you said, Anne Frank is it's an icon in the world of remembering Holocaust and remembering what have happened. And they do not invite the people who actually liberated Auschwitz. So it's horrible. It's evil, actually.
Yeah, that's a good word. And I'm not so outraged by it. That's why I'm talking about it, because it's so disgusting. And by the way, this doesn't hold up for a second, because even the Israeli embassy a couple of years ago talked about the Banderite marches in Ukraine every year. And they said, look, he was a sadistic Nazi collaborator. This guy should not be celebrated. Israel said that, but that's ignored now. So, Jason, any questions for Sonja on that issue?
Not really questions, but I mean, I share your outrage. This is just astounding. I mean, I don't see how there's just no sign ahead that there is any, I don't want to use the word hope, but there's nothing being done to de-escalate this. Sergei Lavrov just gave a speech or made some sort of announcement that he was in communication with Anthony Blinken, and there were no serious proposals contained in this message from the Secretary of State of the United States to the Foreign Minister of Russia, and we're just speeding towards a war with a president of the United States who doesn't even know that he's got classified documents and a Kraken driving his Corvette around.
In fact, we have a clip from Lavrov, so let's all listen to this clip. This is Lavrov about NATO, so hit it.
What our Western partners are saying, no matter how hard they try to justify their actions on pumping more weapons to Ukraine, including the well-known slogans like the path to peace is via weapon supply. Everyone is perfectly aware of what is going on, because NATO, for quite a long time now, has been directly involved in the hybrid war against Russia. That is now taking on more current dimensions by the actions of the Kiev regime. We do not just looking by, but our armed forces and leaders of the special military operation are taking every step to stop the West from fulfilling its plans, from carrying out its plans, and they will not.
So a little hard to understand there because of the dual translation, but he was talking about hybrid warfare. Jason, comments?
Well, what does he mean by hybrid warfare? Proxy war, like paying Ukraine, giving Ukraine the weapons to do the war instead of doing it yourself?
So it's partially an information war and partially a military battle.
Yeah.
Is that your understanding, Sonja?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's actually psychology, an information war, and partly what you said, a military war. But I think the hybrid war is, I hope not, but it soon will be over, and we are facing a real war, a hot war, as we can say. That's very dangerous and very disturbing. As what Jason said, they are not on speaking terms at all. You know, the West is so insane. They just speaking about weapons for peace, and it's unbelievable. They are not open for any discussion. Maybe a few, but there are not many. It's the governments. They are not open for any discussion. It's like they go ahead, and some of them maybe know that they are on the wrong side, but they don't care at all. It's plain evil, what I said before. They're evil, especially the Polish people. I cannot imagine this. You speak about Bandera, but Bandera also killed a lot of Polish people, not himself, but his militia in the Second World War, or even before, I think. So how can you do this, you know, collaborate and support a Nazi, a fascist regime in Ukraine and support them with tanks and soldiers, and it is unbelievable. I don't know who these people are. I really don't know, but I don't know what's wrong with them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sonja. It is evil, but at the same time, it's confounding because despite being evil, it's also incredibly stupid. I mean, you would think even the most evil person has a sense of self-preservation, and it's just difficult to understand how what they are driving us towards is anything other than utter. I mean, remember, when World War II began, that was pre-atomic age. We did not have this notion that one country could just destroy the entire world. And now Putin has told this story about how when he was a child living in his parents' apartment somewhere in Moscow or wherever, that he would chase rats in the basement. And he learned a very important lesson at a young age because he cornered a rat and he felt he was about to catch it. And at the moment he was about to catch it, the rat lunged at him and scratched his face. And he realized how dangerous it was to corner a desperate animal. And that is what they're doing. They're cornering Russia, and it's going to scratch the face of the world with nuclear Armageddon. Yes,
you're right. I agree with you totally. And I think the EU or the Western world is in some sort of desperation, or because, you know, I know the financial system is, I think it broke down completely. Right. And maybe they are so desperate that they don't see the reality anymore. And even what you say with nuclear Armageddon, I mean, I think in the 80s or the 90s, people went down on the streets, you know, to protest against this, especially Germany. I remember that in the 90s. But now nobody seems to care. Even the public, you know, the world public don't seem to care about atomic weapons, nuclear weapons anymore. So maybe they're all numb because of what happened with COVID. I don't know, but it's frightening actually that it's like that. I lived there. I lived in Germany, in the Netherlands, and yeah, people are like brainwashed, I think, by their governments, by propaganda. The propaganda is huge, I must say, like in the US, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Meanwhile, Sonja, what are you hearing is going on in Ukraine or in the Russian part that used to be Ukraine? The Donbass. I don't know what to call it in the war in Russia, but Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic. What's the latest you're hearing there? They've finally acknowledged that the Russians took Bakhmut. The Ukrainians and NATO is finally acknowledging that victory. How's it being taken in Russia, Sonja?
Well, of course, good. We had Solidar before, and everybody was very happy. And you know, Solidar is only about 10, 15 kilometers from Artemyevsk, Bakhmut, so it's called as well. So yeah, it's still going on, a battle, I think, in Bakhmut. But also, there's a very important thing what they discovered first weeks of the war in the conflict in Ukraine, or Donbass, as you said, Novorossiya, as it is been called now. There were a lot of documents found at a biolaboratory from the US, sponsored by the US. It was found in Rubets-Neue, it's in Luhansk, and all of these documents, I think it was about what I said here, about 20,000 documents they made in this. And part of it was going about experimental medicines, what they did on the Ukrainian population. So it was an experiment, like the COVID was an experiment as well. Also, they found proof that before the Russians came in, this laboratory or the personnel, they threw everything out. They didn't even bother to burn it or to bury it somehow. So this is why they found all the documents and all the remains what was in the laboratory. And this is just one laboratory, so there were many there. So imagine what they are going to find all. And I wrote the first article about it today, and it will be a few other ones, 2, 3, because there's a lot of evidence has to be public. So it was also Russia is now also saying that the COVID-19 pandemic, the virus, is made very mortal actually. And this is what they did in Boston, but this is old news that we know already. But they also acknowledge now that the vaccines were very terrible. They were not properly researched. So a lot of side effects are now going on. So this is also an acknowledgement of what people in the EU and US are worried about, are thinking about, and what people are hearing, that they are conspiracy thinkers. But within 6 months you cannot have a proper vaccine. So this is all coming out now, all from the biolabs in the Donbass.
And so, Jason, I don't know if you heard yesterday. Am I right, Sonja? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs yesterday announced those 20,000 documents about the biolabs and how the U.S. was using Ukraine. See, a lot of people in America, they ask questions like, why is the U.S. doing all this? And that's because they don't know the background. And I think, actually, if you look at it, Jason, the reason the U.S. is doing it is the U.S. has been using Ukraine for things like corruption. We saw that with Burisma and Hunter Biden. And they've also been using it for things like developing biolabs, weapons research. Is that right, Sonja?
Yeah, that's right. This was experiments on the people, also on their own soldiers. And you know, a lot of soldiers, they are wounded in battle and they have been sent to Germany to hospitals. And in these hospitals, they discovered that they have some sort of a bacteria or something, so they cannot treat them properly because they are immune to, for instance, antibiotics or other medicine. And a lot of them die there. So it's actually, yeah, it's very frightening because, you know, when these soldiers or the relatives of these soldiers come there, I don't think so, or the personnel in these hospitals go out, it's another threat for the public. So this is what they do, experimenting on people, not only on the, on the weaker people, let's say, but on their own soldiers. And so it's really awful, but it's all coming out now. So that's the good part for the special military operation. But of course, Europe is not very happy about it because all the dirty secrets now are coming out, especially from the US and their biolabs.
Now, Jason, do you have any questions or comments about that? Biolabs in Ukraine?
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to ask about was, you know, we've heard a lot recently and for a while in the United States about Operation Paperclip, where Alan Dulles, who Lee mentioned earlier in the CIA, were very involved in bringing Nazi scientists, doctors, military officers, intelligence people into the U.S. and integrating them into all kinds of different things, universities, medical systems, and all that. And I mean, what I've heard about it always says that it was done because the Soviet Union was also doing it. But I've never actually heard the Russian side of that story, if they acknowledge that they had their own equivalent of Operation Paperclip, or if that's just nonsense made up by Alan Dulles to convince people that they needed to do it.
Well, I didn't hear about it. If they have something like that, like Operation Paperclip, maybe in the future some things will come out. But at the moment, I don't know. I don't have any information about that. But I don't think they have.
I never heard that either, Jason. Yeah, yeah. I haven't heard anything about it. And the U.S. side of it is not conjecture. It is established.
Yeah,
because we can go to the CIA archive and find about Paperclip and also Sunrise, which is how they got Nazis who were Nazis, you know, not people, innocent bystanders, but active Nazi officers out of the country. And Dulles was directly involved in that. And these are not people you can say, well, we need him because he's a scientist. These were generals. These were military.
And also from the death camps, some doctors from the death camps. I read, you can find it on YouTube somewhere. There's a good documentary by this journalist, Annie Jacobson. She wrote a whole book about it. I don't know if you saw it, but that's really interesting. She's putting all the names, all the people there. So that's really interesting to watch it or to read the book. But at the death camps, you know, all this, they committed atrocities, and they live their life freely in the US and doing their experiments, and unbelievable. But that's how it went. But especially with Germany as well, same thing with the Bundesnachrichtendienst. That's the secret service of Germany. Also, they years and years after the Second World War, the personnel were actually ex-Nazis, so same thing.
So another part of the propaganda campaign here in the U.S. is I've seen stories they're running lately about empty store shelves in Russia. Can't get food. The economy is destroyed. Are you seeing any evidence of all of that when you go out to the store, Sonja?
No, not really. You know, I'm living here. There's a big shopping center nearby, a big supermarket, because they are huge here. No, everything is there. It's full actually. So that's nonsense. That's what they want. It's fake news. No.
Right.
Right. So, Jason, you know, what do you notice in the propaganda campaign about this in the U.S.?
It's amazing how effective it's been, right? I think there are a huge number of people who, I mean, even look, Kevin McCarthy is saying that we have to support Ukraine. I don't understand. You know, prior to February 2022, I don't think, even now, I think most Americans could not locate Ukraine on a map. And now we're acting like it's like, I don't know, like the staunchest ally that we must protect. Sonja, you said something very interesting, and I guess I knew it, but it hadn't occurred to me that you're right. I mean, in order for them to be doing this, the alternative for the U.S. has got to be so devastating, or anticipated to be so devastating, that this is seen as a favorable alternative. That we're in for something, I think, very, very not good.
That's what I think too, because, you know, like the government here, Mr. President Putin is saying that we are now getting to a multipolar world. And this is what he said already in 2007, you know, the Munich speech. So this is now reality, and this is happening. And of course, the West, and especially the US, is not very happy about it, because they are losing a lot, you know, they are losing maybe their resources in Africa or somewhere. So this is really bad. And when people are forced to, you know, see all their things, they're losing all their things, they're doing stupid things or very terrible things like they're doing now. I think this is the main reason also that they are doing what they are doing now. And of course also they wanted a war against Russia a long time ago, but this is the main reason. They are losing it. They are losing their unipolar status. And this is, they're very worried about it.
So, Sonja, you said you have an article coming up on the biolab stuff. Tell people where they can find your writing, where they can find that article, Sonja.
I have now a different site that's called Defend Online. And there is where 2 articles are there already. I have my own Dutch site, so that's not so for interest for the US. But I will also write one again for COVID Action magazine, so you can read it there as well. So there are the articles, but Defend Online, there are already 2 out there. It's one about this, what I said, what's happening in Germany with the soldiers. So you can read it too. You can read 2 there already.
But really, we're just at the beginning of this, because the documents are just being released, right? Have they been released yet, actually?
Yes, they have been released, this week. And before that, I wrote a whole bunch of articles already, because, you know, it's not the only one they released, the only articles, the 20,000. But before that, there were all other places what has been liberated, and they also found their medical labs and so on. So, yes, it's a whole, a lot of information what is coming out now.
Yeah, and so Jason, those 20,000 documents, obviously, they're going to be providing rich material for weeks to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And you know, I'm not sure if you had seen this, Lee, but you know, John Cullen, who appears on Crowdsource the Truth on Fridays, in March of 2022, he observed on the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine's website that there were a bunch of links that were dead. You know, they led to nothing. And he went back in archive.org and he found the documents that were previously linked there. And they all pertain to Metabiota and some Ukrainian construction companies. I mean, these were contracts to construct these labs with blueprints and requests for visas for the doctors who were going to work there. And this was all, you know, John found all this, and we were talking about all this right around the time that Marco Rubio was questioning Victoria Nuland, where she acknowledged that there were these biological facilities. You and I have spoken about it in the past, Lee. Even just her trepidation in speaking about it, her body language reveal that she's not being forthcoming. And, you know, again, I've said this before. If I come over to your house with a screwdriver to help you hang up your new TV, that's a tool. But if I use the same exact screwdriver to stab somebody in the neck on the subway, it's a weapon. So just saying that this is a biological laboratory, not a weapons lab, it really isn't a valid explanation of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point.
And also,
Sonja.
Yeah, also what she said, okay, it's biological, it's just laboratories, biological weapon, not for biological weapons, but if the Russians will come there, it might be dangerous. So what is she saying with this? It might be dangerous. Why? it is only, you know, for medical experiments, not for biological weapons. So why was she's actually admitting, she was admitting it.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on this bioweapons thing, Sonja, but great appearance as usual. Thanks so much for being on the backstory, and have a good night, because it's late there. But
yeah.
At least you're warm and can get some food. Okay, Sonja, great appearance as usual. Sonja van den Ende. Let's take a short break, Jason. And when we come back, we'll talk Trump and DeSantis.